Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're recording episode 113. Before I introduce tonight's guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity, and it is available on Amazon. The subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. If you search on Amazon, A Gift from Adversity, Juri Love, Juri Love, you can find it. When I published my book, I got a lot of messages from all over the world in 2020. And I felt very compelled to create a platform where people can safely talk about diversities. But not only that, to share the tools in a gift that came from it. And I'm so deeply grateful for the guests so far coming in from all over the world and sharing their authentic stories. So let's invite tonight's guest. Hi, Alfredo. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Juri. It's a pleasure to be here and pretty excited, to be on your podcast.
Thank you. So let's start with your name, where you're coming in from, and then what you do, and if you have any social media website that you want to share.
Sure. My name is Alfredo Zapata, and I'm coming from Mexico City. I grew up in Mexico City, and what I do is something called I call myself a connector. I'm a nutritionist, I'm a fitness trainer, and I spend half of my life in Los Angeles, California, working as a personal trainer, but also developing the skill of public relationships, which it was an incredible door opening for me to find my purpose, which it was helping people to become healthy from the inside out. I developed a program called Connecting Mind and Body. So it's a non-conventional program to help people to improve not just the appearance, but the inside mindset and body so they can really excel in what they do. And I'm pretty fortunate to be here in Mexico and being able to connect with people all over the world. And
What
my social media, go ahead. Yeah, my social media that I've been more proactive is Instagram. So my handle is Alfredo Zapata Coach. And over there in my profile, there is a link for different services that I provide. Yes.
Thank you so much. So before we get to the first question, I want to say that I'm studying Spanish, but in Spanish. So I know you speak Spanish. So is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, encantada, Alfredo. Me llamo Judy Love. Um, aprende español en japonés, en estudio español, entiendo un poco de español. Estoy muy encantada.
Mucho gusto, Yuri. Es un placer conocerte y sobre todo estar aquí en tu habitat, en tu podcast, and being able to share. And your story is incredible. So I'm very, very excited, and I think we all have something to share to help people to overcome adversity in many ways.
Well, muchas gracias. So let's get started for the first question for the podcast, which is the adversity. So, can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yes, Yuri. Well, back in the 60s, I grew up in Mexico City, and the only child from a single mom. So it wasn't quite common because, especially in Latin families, just having one child, and especially being a single mom, it wasn't actually the best environment in terms of society and family. So I grew up with my grandparents, my uncles, and my mom. So we were kind of like five people there, and I was the only kid. So it was a lot of love, but at the same time, I felt empty because every time I will go to school and they will say, "Well, what's your dad? Is your dad coming to pick you up?" or things like that. And I was, at a young age, so I wasn't really comprehending what happened. My mom said, "Well, your dad used to be a doctor, but he left to the war. So if someone asks you, you just tell them that." And that was kind of like the story. But even though I was young and I had a lot of love, I felt like there was some void inside of my heart. So what happens? I start looking at some of the people doing different interactions, especially gatherings in families, and I was kind of feeling lonely. I will always lean into my mom or to someone adult and I was familiar with because I wanted to feel kind of protected. So what I start thinking, especially because in Latin countries the football soccer was pretty common. Well, it is. I start kind of trying to play by myself with some friends outside. But the main core, and I think that's what it gave me the fundamental of feeling secure, it was running on the streets because I grew up on the business district. So business district in the weekends it was kind of empty. So I will ask permission to walk outside and to start running by myself and feeling the wind blowing on my mind, on my face, and feeling the excitement, feeling like I was in control. Even though I was pretty small and I didn't comprehend that feeling, the motion of my body, the air on my face, start giving me some sense uh, of holiness. I felt like I was a superhero in a way, because Superman, Batman, and all those superheroes were there. It wasn't a comic book, it wasn't on TV or video. So I started feeling like the exercise started giving me an identity, even though I was limping inside because I was always looking for something to fill up that void in myself. So I was pretty introverted. I wasn't good at school, but I had my uncle who was kind of like my father figure who kind of gave me the direction to start playing sports, which it was soccer. At that time, we grew up like very low middle class family. And my uncle said, "Well, if you want to do it, you want to do what I said." So I was kind of feeling a little bit insecure because he wasn't my dad, even though he was protecting me. So I started doing the exercise, playing soccer. Then martial arts came along because one of my other uncles started reading self-defense books. And the self-defense I associated, it was Japanese karate. I associated with feeling protected, especially the bullying at school. Kids weren't that mean, maybe like they are now in a way, but I felt like I was not included. I felt like the other kids were kind of playing and I was just by myself. And martial arts, it became my new identity because I did it not to defend myself. I feel to kind of build in my self-esteem. And I did Shotokan for like 5 years, and it was an incredible discipline that started giving me even more security. That was in my teen years. And I told my uncle, Taekwondo, Korean karate is something that I wanted to pursue because it's more like fighting regular, like boxing and kicking. So, uncle, can you sponsor me to do that? And because I was the only kid in the house, he said, okay, I'm going to sponsor you. I'm going to take you there. And I was a Korean Olympic medalist from Taekwondo that came to Mexico and started opening branches of Taekwondo schools. So I went in, I did 5 years Taekwondo, blue belt. But and then I started looking at the professor, and the professor, every time before class, he would work out without a shirt. And he was very muscular. And I said, well, he's muscular. And he's a Taekwondo teacher. I want to do bodybuilding. So I left martial arts, I went into bodybuilding, but I was still limping with the inside, like void, like I'm not included. I don't have a brother, I don't have a dad, I don't have. So my mind was kind of like clouded. even though on the outside I was a good kid, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any drugs, but I was covering myself. The muscles start showing, I start feeling more secure, and I feel like, okay, what else is in life? I was okay at school, and then I started messing up on my young adulthood, and I start kind of living two lives. One in the morning, pretty good kid, but at night I start kind of going with friends. I smoked just maybe for a little bit. I didn't drink, but I was still feeling like I was separating myself. Two lives, like a Jack and Mr. Hyde. In the morning, good kid. At night was party time. So one of my friends at the gym started kind of giving me confidence. He understood me. He was there with me. We work out together. He moved to LA, to California, and because our passion was bodybuilding in LA in the 60s and 70s, that's when they start growing the mecca of bodybuilding. Gold's Gym Venice was the hub for all the famous bodybuilders, Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, and various competitors. They were looking at the magazines and say, "Oh, I want to go see this guy. I want to know what he's doing." So this guy moved to LA, and he was working out at that place. So my excitement grew, and I say, "I want to go see Alex." And I was studying nutrition. Bodybuilding, then nutrition was kind of like the whole thing that filled me up, but I was still limping inside. I wasn't really complete. And my mom was always very supportive and very, very kind, but she never knew exactly what was going on inside. Because in some Latin countries, whatever goes in the house, it goes under the rug. Most of the time we don't really talk about the feelings really inside, because we want to cover up the appearance, society and in the family nucleus. So anyway, I kind of finished my schooling, and we had the vacation time. So I said, I want to go see Alex. I got my passport, my visa. I gathered a little few dollars because I told my mom I want to go see Alex. I want to visit for a week and then come back. Anyway, so I walk for like 36 hours in the bus, and I get to the border. And, I was very excited because I was going to see my friend. I was going to see Gold's Gym and all the famous people. And I put my documents in front of the officer, and it was a woman, a Latin woman. And she said, okay, let me check. Hold on, I'll be right back. She went inside, and then she came back, and she stamped and canceled my passport. So imagine having all those dreams and all the excitement for me to go and visit and seeing what was my passion. And they said, no, you cannot enter, cancel your passport. But why? There was no reason, no explanation. They just turned around and they left. So I was with my canceled passport, and I was so mad and so devastated. I flew back to Mexico, and I said, forget it. I'm fed up with these people. They're not really, I'm trying to do the right thing, and these people are really obnoxious. So what I did, I graduated. I did my thesis and everything in 9 months. And I said, I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm going to cross the border illegally. So I find the way, and it was like a Netflix movie, like an action movie, just trying to cross for like almost 7 or 8 hours, just to hiding from the highway patrol, for the border patrol, until we finally went and crossed to Los Angeles. From there, that's when I started seeing that void, and something that was inside since I was small started kind of opening, because I said, I made a radical change, and now I'm here. Even though I was with my friend, I feel like I was in another country, in another world, but I was still carrying my bag with a lot of issues. It was kind of like a trash bag behind my back. And I didn't know, because at the time I tried to cover it with whatever was around, the discovery of different things, new things, going to the gym, seeing the people. But inside, at the end, at night, I would feel lonely. I would feel like, what can I do? And because I was drinking at the time socially, I started drinking over there too. So my problems didn't go away. It was just kind of like another chapter of my life that start kind of making me limp in a different country, but with the same mindset and feeling hurt inside. And even though I only knew couple words in English, I feel like, I need to do something. If I don't do something, I'm just gonna collapse, or I don't know what I'm going to do. So I stayed there for like maybe 2 months, and then my mom came to visit because I was the first time that I left her. I grew up with her and everything, so it was kind of like I want to see what my son is doing. So I covered it pretty good. She came and visited. I have a friend who lent me his car to drive her around, and it was nice. But she didn't know what happened. She went back home, and then my friend says, "Well, Fredo, it's good to have you here and stuff, but I think, you have a problem with alcohol. If you want, I can give you some cash so you can go back to Mexico." And I said, "No, Alex, thank you very much. I already attending to the night school for English, and I met this guy who has a part-time. He offered me to move in with him and give me a job. So why don't you help me to move with this guy? Because I don't want to go back Mexico. I want to stay here." And he was very kind. He said, "Okay, here we go. Have a good one." And I start my venture into a new chapter, carrying my bag of problems. I start feeling more secure because I start making money, and I start having a new environment with this, guy who was very, very good worker and very nice. He was from Honduras. And then I got my first car. It was a 280 Nissan, but the front end was kind of messed up because I bought it cheap. So after I got into a discussion with my friend, I didn't have a place to go. So I moved into my car, and I live in my car, and you know where? I live in the parking lot of Gold's Gym Venice, right outside of the Mecca where everybody goes to get in shape. And I found at that parking lot about 3 or 4 cars from people from different countries who came to America to get the American dream. Some of them they were bodybuilders, some of them they were people trying to, make it on the entertainment, and we were kind of start building this community. I was in my little car, and some of the other guys were there in different cars, and at night we will kind of talk and kind of explain what was happening in our lives and things like that. But the alcohol was there, and I was like, well, it didn't change. The only thing I changed, it was countries, because I was still doing the same. So there wasn't really a correlation of someone who was a nutritionist, who was doing bodybuilding, who was trying to make, a new life, new beginning, and I was still holding into that vice that was kind of destroying me inside. I was really, uh, naive because I didn't know how much damage it was going on, because I said, well, my mom never knew about it. I will always call her collect because I didn't have money or I didn't have a phone to call. So we'll call Collect Mexico and say, Mom, I'm okay. I'm here with friends working. And so I was always covering things up. And then one of those nights, I drove the car. It was late at night, and I was looking for a place to drink with the little few bucks that I had. And I left it in one of those gas stations. They have food 24 hours. And it wasn't too far from the gym, from the parking lot. But at that time, I had a few drinks, so I wasn't really uh, conscious. So I went into the gas station trying to get some food, and there was no food ready yet because they were kind of preparing it. It was like 3 or 4 in the morning. So I got mad with the guy, the attendant, and I say, "How come you don't have money? I mean, you don't have food. It's 24 hours market. You should have the food." And he said, "Well, if you don't leave, I'm gonna call the cops." So I just remember then I got scared because I say, "I'm illegal. I'm drinking. They're gonna grab me and they're gonna deport me. So I walk and I forgot my car in the parking lot. I walked back to the parking lot where my friends were, and I slept in one of my friends' cars. And when I wake up on Sunday, I said, "Where's my car? Where's my belongings? Where's my little food that I had? I didn't have anything, just my clothes." And one of the guys that was washing cars at the parking lot said, "What happened, Alfredo?" Because they knew me. And I said, "Well, last night, I don't know what happens, but I forgot my car. I don't know where's my car." Said, no, they said, "Well, don't worry. We're going to drive around and we're going to see if you remember where was your car, where you left the car." So we drove about, 4 blocks around, and it was right on that corner, on that gas station near to the gym where I left my car parked. It was closed. I had the keys, but it was closed, and it was everything inside. At that time, I drove back, and the whole Sunday, I was, what am I going to do? I'm not even a number here in this country. Nobody knows what happens. My family doesn't know. What is it going to be my life from now on? So I need to do something. And back then, there was no religiosity. There was not too much of a faith on anything on God because of, Catholic backgrounds and stuff. So I said, well, God, give me a sign or something. But I made up my mind at that time. And there was another radical decision that I made because I said, if I don't do something for me, no one is going to do it and nothing is going to change. So I didn't say I declare, but it was kind of actually declaring that from that point on, I wasn't going to drink not even a drop of alcohol. And I want to clear myself from the inside out so I can have another chance to live and to do something productive. So that night, I had some dreams, like someone was handing me a glass with, with the alcohol, and I was waking up and saying, "No, I'm making my mind, and I'm gonna hold to it." And it happens a couple of days after, but I was sober, and I started going into sobriety more and more and more until this day. So that was in 2019. No, I'm sorry, it was 1992 when I quit cold turkey in my car. And from that point, I started seeing the light in a different color, the brightness, and the way I made that radical decision, start opening doors. I start connecting different people, and some people saying, "Alfredo, you're good at what you do. Why don't you certify as a personal trainer and start making money?" And I said, "Well, that sounds good." But besides that, I start looking for apartment because I say I cannot be living in the car and trying to clean up myself. So I look on the recycle newspaper and I find this guy. And this guy was a guy who did catering for Jewish events in Los Angeles. It was a Mexican guy who was doing it pretty good. And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm calling about the ad, the apartment." And he said, "Yeah, that's fine, no problem." And because I was doing a side job in this like a little office supply store, they let me go a week before I move in with the guy. So I called the guy when I was going to move, and he says, "You know, I'm not able to move in with you because I had this side job and they let me go, so I don't have money to pay you for the rent." And he said, "Don't worry. If you can help me on the catering events, you can be a waiter and they can pay you in cash every weekend and you can pay the rent." And I said, "Sure, no problem." So everything started kind of falling into place because I made the decision to clean up myself from the inside out. And this guy was so kind. They opened his apartment and he said, "You can eat my food, no problem. We can go to the events together. They pay you in cash, and then you can start, picking yourself up." It was incredible because I was still working out at Gold's Gym because my friend had two IDs, one with picture and one without. So the whole time I was working out at Gold's Gym, which it kept me healthy in a way, but I was cleaning my inside. And that's when I start feeling like things start looking brighter. It's kind of like they edit the movie and it was like 4K and everything was like really bright and shine. And I feel like, wow, how come I haven't seen that before? I was seeing more clouds because I wanted to become accepted, because I wanted to fit in. But now I feel like I'm being myself, and I'm working towards a new future, a new me. That was incredible, and I felt just like another person, really, because then someone says, "Why don't you start going to church? Why don't you start building your faith?" At that time, I made up my mind to get hired by a big health club back then in West LA. Was called the Sports Connection. It was a private owned. They had three locations, one in Santa Monica, one in West Hollywood. And I fill out the application. And they say, okay, well, it sounds like you know what you're doing, but we don't have a space here. Why don't you go to the Santa Monica where we have another location? And it was pretty near to where I used to live with this guy, the catering guy. So I feel like, oh, I have to do again the application because my English wasn't that great in my, grammar. So I said, well, I gotta do it again. So I go to this new location, and it was kind of impressive because it was small glass windows and kind of like a more office building area. So I felt a little intimidated because I said, wow, this thing is not Beverly Hills, but it looks kind of impressive. So I felt kind of insecure. And I said, well, I'm going to go in because, fitness is my passion and everything else. So I went in and I said, well, I'm coming for the ad. You guys, they told me over there they don't have a space, but you guys have space here. Yeah, fill up the application again. And so I fill up the application, and they said, you know what? You're going to have an interview with the supervisor. The supervisor, it was someone who was getting a degree on psychology. So it was someone very sharp in looking at people's behavior and stuff. I know that until later. So I went in and I got the training. It was 2 weeks training at this place, which was incredible because they told me how to manage people, how to understand people, how to serve people, how to be a really customer service. No matter if I was the janitor or if it was the personal trainer, the company trained you that way. So it gave me so much support. And then I start doing floor work, not as a personal trainer, but as a floor trainer, the ones that don't make money for training people. And I said, how come these guys with the blue t-shirt are making more money than me? And the supervisor said, oh, it's because they complete this particular test than they have to do on the regular basis so they can prove, then they can help someone in the correct way so they can get paid an extra money for sessions. So I say I want to be a personal trainer because I say I already train at Gold Gym. I work out many times and I do martial arts and I am a nutritionist. So I start getting in my head, if they're doing it, why don't I do it? So I start being very consistent in what I did, taking measurements, approaching people, doing the assessments, and how to put the treadmill and everything else. So the supervisor said, okay, you think you're ready. So we're going to have a member coming in, a new member, and you're going to interview the member. You're going to talk to the member. I'm going to see how you behave with them. How do you approach the person? How do you position it in the whole thing? And then I'm going to be grading, your performance. So I was nervous because that woman came and she had some spine injuries, and it wasn't major, but it was someone who wanted to get better. So I did that, and at the end, he says, "Okay, Alfredo, let's check your evaluation and see how you did." And I was like, "Oh man, this guy is a psychologist, and he's evaluating me." So I was kind of insecure in a way. But the guy said, "Well, Alfredo, congratulations! I was surprised, and you did very good. So now you're officially a personal trainer. Now you can charge people for package of sessions and make more money besides your minimum wage." And I was like, "Wow, I made it because I'm already a personal trainer." I became personal trainer of the month in one of those months, and I was with them, and I felt like, wow, things are changing. I speak better, not like not like perfect, and I start helping people to become healthier. And I start feeling like that void start closing in my heart. And then someone invited me to church. I turned him down for like 5 days. And then he says, "Alfredo, would you like to come to our church?" It's a non-denominational Christian church. And I was putting aside that because I was trying to clean myself. And I said, well, I already have a job. I already have a car. I'm clean. I'm sober. What else can I need? I didn't have a girlfriend. I wanted to have a girlfriend. And I said, but I feel like there is something missing. Not a void, but something missing in my life. Kind of like the, picture that you have, like, a certain age or after you achieve something, you should have something, like a girlfriend, maybe a family or whatever. So I went to this place because I felt like I needed to clean myself of something. So before that, I said the guy, there's some vacation period, and let me get back to you next time. So at that time, I already moved a couple times with a couple roommates, and this story also pushed me more to get closer to God, because with this roommate and I was living and a couple other roommates, he was gay when I saw the ad. So I said, well, it's close to the area where I live, and I don't care about any particular preference. So I wanted to have something closer because I wanted to be doing the right thing. So the guys interview me and they say, well, the ad, what it says, are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, no problem. And it was a guy from Honduras, the same like the one who gave me job when I first came. So we started living a few months. The parents from this guy come to visit first time after like many years here in LA. So the guy said, my parents don't know about my lifestyle. Could you please keep it to yourself? And I said, yeah, no problem. Well, they're your parents. You know what you do, no problem. So the parents came. He went to the airport for them. I didn't see the guy because I went out. On my way back, he was already gone with them, first time touring and going eat. So about midnight, I hear some noises because the guy wasn't there. And I start looking at the door, and there was some flashlights and some voices. And I said, well, there's somebody coming in, because there was a stairs, and there was someone knocking at the door. So I opened the door, and there was a cup with the parents. I never met the parents until that time, and the dad was with the hands full of blood and stain on his shirt. The son was being shot at the restaurant where these guys were eating for the first time after seeing the guy for like not seeing the guy for like more than 5 years. So a robber came into the restaurant trying to rob people, and the mom had a purse. So this guy trying to block the robber for taking the purse from the mom and got shot on the head. The parents didn't know much English actually, so the cops were kind of asking me questions. Can you translate? Can you tell the parents that we're looking for something to take care of them, and we're gonna take care of the whole paperwork and stuff. So I was shocked because I said, well, why is this happening now? It's not happening to me, but I'm part of the whole thing. And it was kind of like bringing me to reflect about my life. And I said, well, how challenging for this family, but also I was there. So I start feeling like I needed to do something. So then when this guy asked me to go to church again, I said, well, I think there is something that I need to find out. So I went that night after this guy invited me for many times, and I turned him down. And this church was something I never saw before. It was like a United Nations meeting. It was people from all over the world, young, middle age, from universities, from different backgrounds, Chinese, Asian, Japanese, Russian. And I was like, wow. And I said, well, this doesn't look like a church. It was an auditorium. And there was someone speaking at the front, and there was someone just dressed normal, shirt and, slacks, and just speaking very natural about the plans that God has for the world, and how people can really become someone who's faithful and full on his spirit. So I began to study the Bible. I started feeling like I was cleaning myself, and I think from that point I felt complete. I think it was something that taught me a lot. I was in that congregation for like more than 15 years. During that time, I met who is my wife now. She's Chinese, and we had two beautiful children. The first one was diagnosed with autism at age of 3. So there was something that got me also to think, what else is for me to learn from these different trials? Is the adversity that is teaching me, or is something that because I did wrong, then I'm paying for it? So I start praying and I start meditating and saying, I think there is a mission for me. I think there is something that I need to do. And I never pay attention until that time, because I felt like building connections with people, even people that I never knew, start growing something inside, like giving me strength, like a superpower, because speaking another language, communicating, and being able to socialize, having a biracial marriage, and everything was connected to share what I have with others. Besides personal training and eating healthy, it was more like building unity, building community. And that started giving me the satisfaction and saying, I probably didn't grow up with a dad. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family, but I have myself. I have this incredible gift. Then is sharing my love and my experience with people to heal the drama and the trauma that people have been going through many years and maybe generations. So that was very impactful, because my wife was in the same congregation, so our faith was something that got us together pretty close. But also as an individual, I feel like I was doing something more than what I thought that I was supposed to do. Not only personal training, not only nutrition. It was kind of like detaching myself in many branches to really connect with different people. That time, it was only connecting with English speaking people, not because of my choice, but because I was always staying in the West LA area. So there was more people from different countries coming to study, businesses, and it was kind of like making me feel like a fish in the water, even though I was speaking in Spanish with, a few people. And someone says, why don't you tap into the Spanish market? Your personal trainer, your nutritionist, why don't you go to a mixer, business mixer, and start, passing cars and connecting with people in Spanish because you have that opportunity. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to try. So I went to this mixer and, everybody friendly and what do you do? How do you do? And all that stuff. So I saw this woman, light skinned woman. I know she was from Argentina. She was an accountant, but she was someone who was the cornerstone for me to open another avenue in my life. I told her about what I do, and she said, Alfredo, that's great. And how come you haven't done it with the Spanish speaking people? And she said, you're wasting your talent for what you're saying. You have a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom inside. Why don't you come to my TV show? I have a TV show on national television and share part of what you do. And I said, well, really? Yeah, sure, no problem. Let's meet in West Hollywood. This is the studio. And I'm going to record and talk about what you do, and you're going to share something. So I go there, pretty excited. And I feel like, wow, that's something good. So I just went there and I felt like natural just speaking about what I do, about how things are in terms of, health and people's mind and how healthy people feel better and they project better in life. And she said, Alfredo, that was a great show because she was doing a show for self development, like awakening your yourself. And she said, I want you to come back. And I said, well, that's great. But I don't have money to pay because it was a pay advertising sponsoring show. You have to pay to be in. And I said, we just got married and, kind of trying to manage expenses. And she said, don't worry, come back. I went there 5 times. And it was incredible because I felt like I was at home. Speaking of what I know, what my passion was, and also in the Spanish community. She invited me to this talk that she was doing in this event, and I met this guy. This guy was from Mexico, living in LA. He grew up with polio, so he was overcoming challenges since he was little. He moved to LA. He became a writer, and he started writing about his walks in life. And not only that, the guy had like 3 kids, and the youngest blind with kidney failure and other situations in the middle son. But he was there selling his books, selling t-shirts, and it was with a great spirit. And I met him while I was there at this event with this woman. And I said, well, my name is Alfredo. How you doing? Well, my name is Eduardo. And we connect so incredible. And we became friends. He called me one time and he said, Alfredo, why don't you come and meet my friends? We're a group of writers. We're preparing to launch a book. And I want you to meet these guys. And maybe in the second edition, you can be in it. And I said, okay, well, that's good. So they were meeting at this Denny's restaurant. So I went in there. There was like 16 or 17 people, men and women, Hispanic from different places. And they were talking about, they're finishing the chapter because they were going to take it to the editor and print it and all that. And I said, okay, well, good meeting you. I'm Alfredo, and introduced myself. And I left home. So by at midnight, Eduardo called me and said, Alfredo, you know what? 4 people from the group left because they cannot keep up with the, editing and meeting, family and work related things. So I want you to be in the book. You have a week to write the chapter and to be included in this book. And I said, wow, in a book? I never wrote a book. What am I going to say? And he said, Alfredo, everybody has a story to tell. And what you told me is incredible. People need to know about overcoming adversity. This group became 13 writers. One of them was already a public speaker and had an editorial company. We were going to publish the book with him. In one of those meetings, he took all the chapters and left, and we couldn't find them. And we already gave the down payment for the LA Convention Center where we're going to host the event. And we said, what do we do? The guy wasn't nowhere to be found. And we had a copy in our computer. And we thought, well, maybe if we register the book, maybe the guy can sue us, because if he had the originals, he could have registered and do his own thing. And we cannot stop because we already gave down payment. We gotta do something right away. We ended up having a new chapter. We got write a chapter in a week again. We gotta put a new cover, a new title. The previous title was called The Beacons of Light, but in this case, the book got named Discover Your Greatness. In almost 2 weeks, we had to do all over again a new book, new title, new cover. People never knew that until after the launch of the book, but it was incredible. And more incredible was because one of the writers knew Don Miguel Ruiz, the one who wrote the Four Agreements. He was our godfather at that event. He was giving us a good ammunition to saying, you guys have an incredible treasure in your hands, and show it to the world, be authentic, and you're going to be doing incredible things for the Spanish community. It was awesome. And from there, things start changing so much, so much.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, I know when we pre-interviewed, we had a conversation. You mentioned about you had to go back to Mexico. Can you tell us a little bit about why you are in Mexico now?
Yes, that was the new season, or the next season in my life chapters. Um, After I got married, and after I was, with the book and doing, some speaking engagements, everything seemed okay. But before I got married, I did a paperwork to get my temporary residence and my work permit, because I wanted to do the right thing. After I got sober and I started working as a personal trainer, a friend of mine told me, well, I went with this person and she helped me to file an application, and I got my work permit, my social security. So I'm working, and finally I got my residence. And I said, oh, that's great. So I want to do the right thing. I'm cleaning myself, so I want to do things right. I went with this woman. She said, well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a legal assistant, but I've been helping hundreds of people to get their papers and stuff. So tell me about you. I told her, and she said, well, we're going to file a political asylum for you, which wasn't true. But in order to get the work permit and the social, she needed to file for something. So she did. And, after a month, I got my social in the mail, I got my work permit, and I said, wow, that's awesome. So I went a few years right before I started dating and got married. And that case had a date to be reviewed and everything. So I went to the audience. I went to the judge, and the judge said, well, based on what you are trying to prove here and what we see, and, the lawyers were there, excuse me, and they said, but your application is not good. It doesn't have the fundamentals for you to get your petition. So it's denied. And at that point, she was already instructing me, that lady, to help me if that happens to file for appeal. So I filed for appeal, and they said, well, very well. You go and pay your dues, and then you wait for the hearing. So I paid that, and I continue several years going to church, doing the right thing. At that time, I started dating my wife. She's American citizen. So that paper was just getting pending. But in the meantime, we filed for spouse, American citizen spouse, and everything went fine. We went to the interviews, and everything looked perfect. But at that place, they didn't give me the temporary residence, which normally that's what they do. What they did, they sent me in the mail a visa petition. The visa petition is when you have to leave the country, wait for the paperwork to get done until you come back. But at that time, I already had my first son, and my second was on the way. She wasn't working, and I said, how am I going to leave her by herself with two kids? And the lawyer saying, well, we're gonna try to kind of swap the case, all case for new case, so you can continue living in here and get your residency. But that wasn't legally approved. There was no law to approve that. So the old case got dismissed, and because I never got any notification, it generated a deportation order, which it was looking for me for several years while I was living my new life with my wife and my kids and working and doing different things. There was no notice until I walked out of the parking lot with my kids, take them to school, and there was the ACE officers outside of my building waiting for me. They said, are you afraid? Yeah, pull back your car. We have the deportation order. And I said, well, is this happen again? Another blow in the stomach. My kids were small. The oldest was like 5. The youngest was about 3. And they went upstairs to get my wife. She came down, and she already knew, but it was surprising. The kids went with her. I closed my car. I gave her the keys. I only kept my cell phone and my wallet. And they said, come on, let's go inside. I went in the van. They put me handcuffs. They drove me downtown that morning. By 5 o'clock that day, I was taken to the border, to Tijuana. And I said, what am I going to do? I left my wife. I only had one phone call to make. She couldn't get the lawyers because the lawyers then we hired years ago already left the firm, and there was no preparation of anything. It was like another dream, but in this case was a nightmare because I said I left my wife, my kids. I'm back in Mexico, and what am I going to do? Even though my faith was strong at that time, I felt like I needed to do some soul searching, some meditation, something to feel at peace, even though I wasn't totally devastated. I guess it was kind of like aftershocks that came later, and they gathered me pretty warm. There was like a nuns type of fellowship in that border where they give you, like the basics, some food. They do a blood check. They take a picture. They put a like a temporary ID, even though you're Mexican, but you don't have any documents. So I did have some cell phone connection still. So I started calling in DJ to my wife, to friends, trying to kind of put together something to kind of give her support to my wife and trying to see what I can do.
So
It
when was
was
when
kind of
what
like
year?
a dream that was in 2012.
Okay.
And it was like a new beginning. So yeah, it was pretty difficult to start all over.
So question for you, because I don't know much about
And then
deportation.
yes,
So when you get deported, you are not allowed to come back to America.
well, they gave you a punishment, which is it could be a few months, could be a few years. They decided it's not something specific based on each case. In this case, they fooled me, telling me that it wasn't going to be deportation when I was in LA, but they were doing this raid where they will pick up people from everywhere in US and they will deport them without reason. So they gave me 10 years. They gave me a paper saying you cannot re-enter until 10 years. And I said, well, 10 years, what am I going to do? Luckily, I got into this place where they give you 15 days. It's like a hostel for deported people in TJ, where everybody lives in like small rooms with like a 2, 3 bunker beds, and you don't know who you're sleeping next to. So you have to be very careful, even though they give you food and they give you shelter. So people from different walks of life in different countries, Hispanics, they we live there for 15 days. After 15 days, you have to look for something. Either you come back or you go to your country. But that's like a Christian household that hosts people since the 1980s or something like that.
So
But
how
yeah,
about your wife and children? Are they allowed to go visit you in Mexico?
yeah, they're American citizens. Once I moved, I stayed there 15 days. After those 15 days, I changed location to someone that I knew from the previous church, and I was in LA in TJ, which they gave me place to stay. So they came to visit me in a holiday. It was a memorial. They came, a few weeks after, and they went back. So they saw that I was okay. So she decided to come and live with me. So everybody moved. They sold everything they could. The church helped them to store things, to sell, to help her with some funds, and they moved with me to Tijuana, and it was another beginning.
So now you and your wife and kids are living in Mexico together.
After I was in TJ, I couldn't find a job because I never worked in Mexico. I didn't have papers in Mexico. So I connect with someone who was a big investor in Mexico City. He was building a sports rehab center, something that it wasn't like this in Mexico before. A guy was very wealthy and he liked my profile. He fly me to Mexico City and he says, I want to hire you. I want to help you. Come and work with me. So I did. I stayed there for like 4 months. I went back to TJ. They stay in TJ, my family. After 6 months, I went and got him. I brought him back to Mexico City. But after a year, the investor got some underground businesses and he was not really working honestly. So he fired a bunch of people, and I was one of them. And my life started all over again. Wife and kids in Mexico with no work. So yeah, it was pretty challenging back then.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the story. It's been about like an hour sharing the story. So I want to move to questions and then the last question for this podcast and um, close the show. So, what are the top three tools that you use to overcome these challenges that you can share with people?
Uh, well, now I know. Back then, it was kind of like going by my feelings, but I believe listen to my intuition, and prayer was really the key, because every time I was in trouble in my mind, I needed to be at peace. I didn't know how, but in some parts of my life, I was able to find that peace being by myself. Maybe I wasn't praying because back then it wasn't something that I knew how, but I was trying to listen inside to my mind what was the right thing to do. And I think sometimes when we're troubled in our head with everything that goes around, we react and we don't listen to our intuition. And I believe the intuition and being able to pray, it gave me that confidence to make these radical decisions. And from there, things start looking much better.
Well, thank you so much. And then, what would you say a gift that came from your adversity?
The gift from adversity, I see there was like nothing is impossible when you put your mind to it. And I think God and the universe opens the doors once you take action and you don't quit. And that's what I've been doing these last few years here in Mexico.
Well, thank you so much. So, I would like you to say something in Spanish for some people who might be listening and speak Spanish. Maybe some life advice if they are going through some difficulty in Spanish. So, por favor, puede decir en español, um, ¿cómo se dice advice?
Consejo.
Consejo. Yes, puede ser consejo, por favor, en español.
Yes, okay, Yuri. Bueno, para la gente que en algún momento han estado con adversidad o con algunos situaciones difíciles en su vida y no ven tal vez la salida o la luz para seguir adelante, pónganse a tomar un momento en silencio y escuchen a su corazón, escuchen lo que les dice su voz interna, pero asegúrese de que están en paz. Cuando estamos preocupados, cuando estamos tristes, cuando estamos enojados, no pensamos en escuchar nuestra intuición. Y cuando tenemos esa paz interna, no importa lo que esté pasando afuera, vamos a poder escuchar esa voz que nos dice lo que es correcto para hacer y podernos liberar de esa presión que tenemos en nuestro mente y nuestro corazón.
Muchas gracias.
Con gusto.
Well, thank you, Alfredo, for being part of A Gift from Adversity tonight.
Thank you very much, Judy. It's a pleasure, and I'm just excited to be here. I'm honored also.
Wonderful. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in to A Gift from Adversity. I hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you again for tuning in.